All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to explore one of the biggest stories you could possibly tell, the Odyssey of the soul. We're using the spiritual text, God Speaks, as our guide to map out this absolutely epic journey, from the very first spark of creation all the way to its final destination, self-realization. You know, everything really starts with two simple questions that pretty much everyone asks at some point. Who am I? And why am I even here? Well, according to our source material, these aren't just some late-night philosophical thoughts. Nope, they are the actual cosmic engine that kicks the entire universe into gear. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with that ultimate question that got the whole ball rolling. Then, we'll follow the soul through four huge stages. First up is the outward journey, evolution. Then comes the whole cycle of experience we call reincarnation. After that, the journey turns inward with involution, and it all leads to the final endgame, realization. Let's get started. So picture this. Before time, before space, before literally anything existed, there was just a state of perfect, infinite potential. But, and this is a big but, this state had no idea just how perfect it was. It was completely unconscious of itself. Our source calls this the beyond state of God. The best way to think about it is like an infinite, perfectly calm ocean. It holds all the power, all the knowledge, all the bliss you can imagine, but it's all just latent, kind of like being in a deep, dreamless sleep. The ocean is everything, but it doesn't know it's the ocean. And then, out of this total stillness, a single thought, a whim, just pops into existence. And that thought is a question. Who am I? This one little urge for self-knowledge acts like a cosmic Big Bang. It shatters the peace and sets all of creation into motion. Because, how can an ocean ever really know itself as an ocean without first finding out what it's like not to be one? Now, you can't go on a journey like this without some wheels, right? So the soul gets equipped with three essential vehicles. Just think of it like a car. You've got the gross body, that's the physical car itself, the part that lets you experience the material world. Then you have the subtle body, which is like the energy or the fuel that makes the whole thing go. And finally, there's the mental body. That's the mind, the driver, deciding where to go and what to do.
And with that, the journey is officially underway. We enter the first great stage, evolution. And this is the long outward climb, starting from the most basic form of existence and aiming for one thing, full, complete consciousness.
So here's that whole grand arc in one shot. It all starts with evolution, right? That's the outward path to build up consciousness. That's followed by reincarnation, which is all about balancing out experiences. Then the whole thing flips, and the journey turns inward with involution, which is a trip through the inner worlds. And it all builds up to that final moment of realization. Man, this first stage it's staggeringly long. Using its gross body, the soul just keeps experiencing life through a huge succession of forms. It starts out as a stone, with almost zero awareness. Then it moves through plants, then to worms, where it gets movement. It becomes a fish, then a bird, and countless other animal forms. And with each step, consciousness just expands a little more, slowly, gradually reaching for its peak. And here's the absolute key to this whole stage. The entire purpose of this massive, eons-long evolutionary chain is to produce one specific thing. It's all about forging a vehicle that's capable of holding 100% consciousness. And according to God Speaks, that final product, the perfect vehicle for self-awareness, is the human form. So, once that perfect vehicle, the human form, is finally built, the goal of the journey totally shifts. It's not about developing consciousness anymore. It's now about using that consciousness to experience every single possible thing about human existence. And this is where the timescale just gets kind of mind-bending. The traditional number given is that the soul incarnates in human form about 8.4 million times. That's life after life after life, altogether the complete range of human experiences. To be rich, to be poor, to be a man, a woman, to live in every culture, every possible situation you can imagine. So what's driving this crazy cycle? It's a concept called sanskaras, or impressions. Basically, every single thought, every feeling, every action you have creates a sanskara. You can think of it like a kind of cosmic fuel. The whole point of reincarnation is to create and then spend this fuel by experiencing opposites, being cruel and then being compassionate, being wealthy and then being poor, to balance the soul's books. God Speaks has a pretty unique way of looking at heaven and hell. They're not some final, eternal destination. Nope, they're just temporary layovers between lives. It's where the soul gets to experience a super concentrated dose of its good or bad sanskaras, basically clearing the slate a bit before it has to jump back into another body. So, after millions of lives running around in the outer world, the soul starts to get, well, tired. It starts to figure out that lasting happiness isn't something you can find out there. And this is a huge turning point. It's the beginning of the journey back inward. This is the great homecoming. Consciousness finally shifts its focus away from the gross physical world and turns to the inner realms. Remember those other two vehicles we talked about, the subtle body and the mental body? Well, now it's their time to shine. They become the main way to travel as the soul journeys inward through the worlds of energy and thought, searching for the self it came from. Now, this inward trip isn't just some vague spiritual feeling. It's an actual ascent through 6 distinct planes of consciousness. It starts off subtly, just perceiving the sights and sounds of the energy world. But as the soul climbs higher, it starts to get access to some incredible powers. First minor miracles, then bigger ones, until it hits the 4th plane, where it can wield almost godlike power over creation itself. And that brings us to a place of immense power, and frankly, immense danger. The Source uses this really striking analogy for soul on the 4th plane. They've got these incredible divine abilities, but they're still being driven by a regular human mind. You can imagine the temptation to misuse that power is just overwhelming. The stakes here could not possibly be higher. If the soul misuses these powers, its consciousness literally shatters, and it goes through what's called a vertical fall. It gets shot all the way back to being a stone, having to start the entire journey of evolution all over again. But if it can resist that temptation, it continues its climb, even stronger for having passed the test. So after navigating all those inner worlds and passing these incredible tests, the soul finally arrives at the very doorstep of its destination. This is it, the climax of the entire cosmic Odyssey, the final stage of realization. On the 7th and final plane, the very last barrier just dissolves. The limited mind is completely annihilated, a state called mononash, which means the destruction of the mind. The individual drop of water finally merges back into the infinite ocean. The soul at last knows the answer to that very first question. Who am I? And the answer is, I am God. Okay, so our Source makes one last, really crucial distinction here. There's realization, which is achieved while you're still in a human body. This lets you experience God's infinite knowledge, power, and bliss, and you can even serve humanity as a perfect master. Then there's liberation. This is what most souls achieve, and it happens after the final death. They get to experience God's infinite bliss forever. Either way, the long journey is finally over. Freedom is won. And this really brings us to the core takeaway of this entire thing. The whole cosmic drama, the evolution, the millions of lives, the inner journey, it all turns out to be an illusion, a kind of divine dream that God had to dream in order to wake up to itself. The whole point was the journey. So the ultimate point of this huge cosmic story isn't just to explain the universe, it's to explain us. It takes that first big question and turns it right back on every single one of us, leaving us with a final thought. Where are you on this journey?